On August 22, at 1806, Harlan Wade, a forensic archaeology specialist sent by Ridgeview University, arrived at Pinecrest Basin to investigate ancient indigenous settlement lines that, according to recent satellite data, might soon fall within a planned construction zone. His task was simple: mark coordinates, collect soil samples, and leave everything ready for later analysis. The area was covered by a low mist, unusual for summer. It wasn't dense, but thick enough to distort distance perception. Harlan set up his sampling kit 30 meters from an abandoned lookout cabin. He planned to use it as a topographical reference point. He didn't hear the usual branch cracking that signals the presence of animals. The first thing he noticed was that the mist, in one specific spot, seemed to part, as if a massive body were pushing the air aside. The reaction was instinctive. Harlan looked up. 10 meters away, between the trunks, stood a partial figure. Not a clear outline, but a tall, dark mass that broke the uniformity of the fog. The texture resembled wet, thick, irregular fur. At 1814, his soil scanner emitted an alarm. The laser sensor meant to measure ground depth registered a massive interruption, as if something had crossed in front of the beam without making a sound. Harlan adjusted its position. The sensor failed again. The area was not empty. At 1819, an object shot out from the tree line and landed a meter from his feet. A thick log, not a branch, a log that would have required 2 people to move it. And it had been thrown as a warning, not an attack. The impact drove the wood straight into the earth. The message was clear. It was getting closer. Harlan decided to take shelter in the cabin. He pushed the door, swollen from humidity, and managed to get inside. What he found there unsettled him more than the figure in the woods. Fresh marks on the floor, long and deep, as if something enormous had dragged its weight inside just hours earlier. The tracks weren't round like a bear's, nor narrow like a human's. They had a long, impossibly long stride. At 1833, the mist began to move again, but this time it advanced toward the cabin like a slow wave. Harlan peeked through the window and saw it clearly for the first time. The creature was massive, its dark fur clumped with moisture. It walked upright, but with its shoulders slanted forward, as if analyzing every element in its surroundings. It didn't have the glowing eyes from the legends. Its eyes were black, opaque, profoundly aware. The worst part was when it crouched. The creature lowered itself to look beneath the window frame, not to frighten him, but like someone checking the integrity of a structure. A huge hand rested on the cabin's outer wall. Harlan felt the vibration through his own back. At 1840, the creature simply turned and walked back into the mist. It didn't run, it didn't flee, it just withdrew, as if it had finished an inspection. Harlan's equipment was found intact. He never was. When Miles Keaton arrived at the abandoned cabin in Falcon's Rest, he wasn't on an official mission. He had insisted on checking a trail on his own, where, days earlier, a hiker had reported a large figure moving between the trees. The description sounded exaggerated, but he decided to inspect the area before storms closed the access roads. From the start, he sensed something was off. The forest felt heavier than usual, as if the air had changed density. The cabin, an old wooden structure darkened by humidity, was intact but showed irregular wear, as if certain sections had been pressed from the outside with tremendous force. Miles circled the place searching for tracks, expecting signs of bears or elk. What he found unsettled him. Deep impressions in the soil, too long for a quadruped, yet far too wide for any human stride. Alongside them were branches snapped high above him, at least 3 meters off the ground. As he examined them, he heard a sound he couldn't classify. Not a growl, not a step. A sharp, forceful exhale, like someone releasing air after lifting something heavy. It came from the slope behind him. He didn't turn right away. The sensation was immediate and unmistakable. Whatever was behind him was measuring him. He moved toward the cabin's entrance, not to hide, but to place a structure between himself and the forest. As he reached the threshold, something shot loose from the hillside with surprising speed. A sizable rock rolled downhill, not fallen naturally, but thrown. It struck a tree nearby and split apart. Miles held his breath. That wasn't defensive behavior, it was a warning. He stepped inside the cabin to stabilize his position and observe through a side opening. The light filtering through the trees was dim, but enough to catch movement. Something large moved between the trunks, not chaotically, but with deliberate control. It wasn't avoiding being seen, but it wasn't revealing itself either. The creature advanced slightly, exposing part of its torso and an arm covered in dark, heavy fur matted with damp earth. There was no doubt it was bipedal, and its posture was firm, dominant, almost arrogant. Miles crouched a little to avoid lining up with the window. The creature mirrored him, not like a reflex, like a study, as if it was learning his reactions. The tension broke when a sharp noise echoed inside the cabin. Miles turned quickly. On the floor, beside the inner frame, lay a thick, freshly torn branch. Someone had placed it there or thrown it precisely through a gap in the damaged roof. When he looked back outside, the figure was gone. The forest looked unchanged, yet held that unmistakable feeling that comes when something retreats calmly, fully aware it owns the terrain. Miles left the cabin without running, but with the absolute certainty that he had been watched with intent during every step. And although he searched the area for hours, he found nothing. Only marks. Marks far too high. On October 14, at 22:47, Forest Ranger Dawson Merrick recorded in his log a sudden drop in temperature around the lookout cabin at Red Hollow Ridge. The place was silent, too silent for that time of year. No wind through the pines, no natural creak of branches, just a heavy stillness as if the forest were holding its breath. Dawson had spent more than 15 years patrolling that northwestern region and knew every sound in the valley. That night, however, something put him on edge the moment he closed to the cabin's back door. First came a smell, a stench of wet earth mixed with a metallic hint, sharp, almost acidic. Then a dry noise, not a creak, an impact, as if something huge had stepped on a root and snapped it clean in half. At 22:53, the exterior lights detected movement. The sensor triggered and cast a yellow beam toward the tree line. Dawson grabbed his binoculars without thinking. What he saw froze him. A silhouette, not any known animal, tall, extremely tall, and completely upright. It didn't walk, it advanced, slowly, measuring each step as if analyzing the cabin's structure or the behavior of the lights. The creature didn't seem bothered by the brightness. It tolerated it, even studied it. Dawson lowered the binoculars only when a heavy thud hit the north wall. It didn't come from the creature he was watching, at least not from that one. There was another. The second hit was stronger, enough to make the window pane vibrate. Dawson stepped back and reached for the radio, but a burst of static replaced the signal. He adjusted the antenna. The noise persisted as if the channel were partially jammed. Then, a growl. Low, deep, almost subterranean. It wasn't a throat sound, it was chest vibration. Dawson felt the cabin's air tighten around him. At 23:01, the first individual, the one in the light, moved closer. It stepped fully into the illuminated area. Its fur was thick and dark, glistening with moisture. Its shoulders were as wide as a doorframe, its arms nearly reaching its knees. But what paralyzed Dawson were the eyes. Dark, deep, without reflection. There was no curiosity. There was assessment. A second impact, this time accompanied by a dragging noise, came from the opposite wall. Dawson realized he was being surrounded. He grabbed the emergency shotgun and secured the main door. The silence returned, but only briefly. Then he heard breathing, not from outside, from the roof. Something moved slowly across the metal sheets, heavy, deliberate. The smell drifted in through the vent again, stronger now, as if the creature were sniffing the fear inside. At 23:09, without warning, a roar shook the entire structure. It wasn't a warning, it was territorial. Dawson aimed at the window, bracing for the strike. But it never came. After the roar, only footsteps moved away. First one, then another, then several more. The forest regained its sound minutes later. Dawson didn't open the door until sunrise.